Question be now put.
I'll listen to David Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I rise to take my first call on part 5 and especially an important topic, KiwiSaver. The proof of the pudding, as they say, is in the eating. And KiwiSaver has been eaten by almost 1 out of every 2 adult New Zealanders. There are 1.5 million odd members in the KiwiSaver scheme, so I think people have voted with their feet and joined it. It's been a remarkably successful scheme, Mr Chairman, and that has been evidenced by the fact that it's grown so strongly. Unfortunately, in the last 2 years, the rate of growth of the value of the savings in the scheme has not kept pace with its earlier growth, and that, I would suggest, is a direct reflection of the way that the current government has cheapened the scheme, giving their employer buddies a free ride by reducing the employer contributions, and thereby, strangely, of course, putting relatively more of the weight of contribution onto the Crown, onto the taxpayer, and that is potentially threatening the scheme. So it's very interesting that the government has chosen a backdoor SOP to begin the next wave of tinkering with the KiwiSaver scheme. Now, the KiwiSaver concept is up for discussion at the moment. It's up for discussion alongside other savings instruments in the context of the Savings Working Group. It's an academic group which has been brought together with a heavily circumscribed terms of reference by the Minister of Finance, who says you can't go to compulsory savings, you can't do this and that. But what they can do is they can have a look at the opportunity costs of various ways of increasing the savings rate. Before we go into that in a bit more detail and what impact this part is going to have on that, I just have to have one definitional comment, Mr Chairman, about the phrase savings. It's being overused at the moment by the government. They are contending that because our recovery is not happening, that is because New Zealand households and families are not, because they are, saving so much. And actually, that's a bit of a stretch of the definition. What's happening is people aren't consuming so much because their real incomes are going down and they don't have as much to spend. Now, being broke isn't the same as having stuff left over and putting it in the piggy bank. Piggy bank's dry. In fact, sometimes there's not food on the table. I just ducked out to go to the doctor, actually, with this throat thing I've got. Do you know what? It was $91. $91 for a GP consult. When Kiwi families are paying $90 to go to the GP, I'll tell you what, there won't be much left over for KiwiSaver or anything else. And who was it that took the caps off GP fees? The current government. So, I mean, you know, things are going to hell in a handbasket all around the country. Our worry, sir, in short, is that the amendments in this part to KiwiSaver are the thin end of a bigger wedge. We are worried that this government is going to take the hatchet to KiwiSaver the way it's undermined the New Zealand Superannuation Fund by suspending pre-funding for a decade. And we are very, very cautious about what's going to come out of the Savings Working Group and why. Well, here's the report of the Tax Working Group, which lay behind some of the rest of this gargantuan SOP. The government first set very tight terms of reference, and then they proceeded to ignore most of the recommendations, picking and choosing the few that they wanted. And of course the burden of most of the SOP, sir, was in relation to replacing the LAQC regime with the new see-through companies, or look-through companies. And the look-through companies are a slightly more tepid version of LAQCs, but they still allow people to write income off from a company against your personal income. And we question in these tough times whether the country can afford those kind of avoidance opportunities. So, what does this part do? Well, Part 5 has a range of clauses, like Clause 94B, which make technical amendments to the way that KiwiSaver operates. There's automatic entry rules to not apply. Well, you know, automatic entry has been perhaps the single most important reason why we've got so many people in the KiwiSaver scheme. Because once they start and they pick up their government contribution, then they get into a good savings habit. That is what real savings is. It's not just failing to consume because you're short of money. It's actual savings habits that build the wealth of the family and the nation going forward. So we're very concerned and we oppose Clause 94B, which starts to undermine those automatic enrolment rules. Clauses 95 and 96. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Call Jackie Blue.
Mr. Chairman.